I think the questions will keep coming. So
Okay.
I think for now, it would be good to wrap up, especially with
Okay.
the job search questions. The
Okay.
topic is more neurodivergent. So we'll,
Okay.
save those for later or
Okay. Of
redirect to other resources. But thank you so much, Kristen, for
course.
answering all these questions. Really appreciate it.
Thanks. I
And
can stay, I'll stay on and try to type responses, and then let the party go on. But thank you all.
And yeah, and I think introducing our next speaker, we have Yasmin. So, Yasmin, feel free to introduce yourself. And I know you got the heads up on the Zoom bomber, but if you would like to share your screen, definitely try it. And if something happens, we can just like share the presentation in the chat, but we just keep going.
Hi, guys. My name is Yasmin. One second while I share my screen. Well, I guess you guys let me know if so anything happens. Um, One moment. I actually prepared to just share the link, but one second while I open this up. Can everyone see my screen? Okay,
Yes,
good.
we can.
Okay, let me close. So, hey, you guys. My name is Yasmin Abi. Today, my presentation is called From Espresso to Empathy Maps. So, just talking about my career pivot from customer service into UX research. So I'm Yasmin, a native New Yorker. I was actually a Starbucks store manager, and now I'm a UX researcher. So I'll talk a little bit more about that. A little bit of table contents just to kind of get some background of what we'll be talking about today. So first, just to kind of get things started, I want to talk about my journey at Starbucks. So I worked at Starbucks back in 2015 as a barista, grew within the company as a supervisor, and then landed as ASM slash store manager starting 2018. Um, that was a great experience in terms of, uh, working with customers and getting to know partners in terms of we call partners like baristas and things like that at Starbucks. I worked on site in Queens and pretty much worked 50 to 60 hours weekly as a manager. I ran a team of 25 employees, and it wasn't only just serving coffee, it was, running store operations, administrative tasks such as payroll, um, creating schedules, making sure we're within health codes and things of that nature, and then also employee coaching and development. So those are really big things that I've done in my role. And then also, really honing in on the top tier customer service. So here's just some pictures of just my time there. Really great experience. And then what sparked my transition. COVID hit, and I'm sure that's a lot of people's stories regarding some shifts in career. As a store manager, I found myself not just running a store, but supporting a team and customers through uncertainty, stress, and constant change, which was great for learning and uh, dealing with ambiguity, right? But really made me think about within what I wanted to do in my career and what that would look like for me. So the main things that I was thinking about was a work-life balance, right? So as I mentioned prior, I was working 50 to 60 hours a week, and physically, mentally, emotionally exhausted. So I wanted to have that balance. Obviously, everyone talks about an increase in pay. That's very great. Unfortunately, in like the customer service kind of realm, a lot of, people are underpaid. Something a remote and hybrid role, and then also career growth opportunity. The trajectory for a store manager was more so, growing into a district manager or higher, and that just wasn't where I saw myself. So I wanted that space for growth. Um, During that time of just processing what I wanted to do, I had no idea what I even wanted to go down or which path to go down. I actually was talking with a friend of mine, Velvet, who's actually going to be speaking in the conference today as well, a little bit later in the afternoon. And she's the one that actually brought up Ideate Lab slash UX Woman to me. So I had no clue what UX was. You hear of like software engineers and computer techs and IT support and things like that, but I never heard of UX. So I was curious on what that was. And usually I'm a very deep thinker. But this was like the one thing I was like, no, I'm gonna look into it really quick. I think I scheduled a session with Samaya and I signed up immediately just to kind of, see how this can be a new career path for me. Um, so initially, we're just talking about bridging the gap. I was really worried about this idea being far-fetched for myself. But during my connect and like thinking about joining Ideate Lab slash UX Woman, I realized how many skills I have that I can bring from Starbucks as a manager as a UX researcher. So, these are sometimes seen as more soft skills that we build in like some of these other fields in customer service, but they play a really big role in the world of UX, right? So, empathy, human-centered thinking, problem solving and adaptability, data-informed decision making, leadership and facilitation, and project and time management, right? It seems very technical when you're seeing it from that, but like little examples for like data-informed decision making. I used to look at our P&L at Starbucks and looking at how things are spent or looking at customer um, satisfaction scores and seeing how I can better the experience within my store, right? These are all things that I did as a manager, but I didn't even acknowledge how this can be parallel to something in more of like the tech field. So the transition. So I did the boot camp, which was great in terms of, providing an overview and kind of a foundation for myself of, um, you know, what is UX? How would I do research, design? Which one do I see myself more in? Once I was done with that, I really had to hone in and, I think at that time I didn't even have a LinkedIn, so I had to create a LinkedIn, create my resume, create my portfolio, which took some time. I actually also quit my job at Starbucks, which I was there for 7 years. So that was um, a big jump for myself, and I definitely jumped because I was like freaking out. I'm like, how am I leaving something that was very stable for me? And I've built a lot of relationships and dynamics there. Actually, during that time, and also I left Starbucks because it was taking up a lot of my time. I wasn't able to put or delegate a little bit of time towards UX. So I actually became a recruiter for a staffing agency. And that was, again, very short-lived. I worked that for a couple of months, sorry, back in 2022. And it was insightful in terms of I learned how recruiters work, how those kind of, staffing agencies worked, and it helped me when I was applying for jobs within UX. And then also something that really helped was networking events and conferences that I went to. Because I live in New York City, I went to a lot that were like in Manhattan or in Queens or even virtual. There's a lot of virtual options out there. I think also what really helped was my friend who also did the boot camp that I mentioned earlier. We did it together and we had each other as like accountability buddies. So we were like, listen, we have to, keep going, keep going. So it's good to have that kind of like cheerleader next to you to and talk about all like the woes you're going through. And then also apply, apply, apply. I did, it was like a full-time job applying, I felt like. So I was unemployed for that period once I left recruiting. Actually had to move back in with my parents, and then was hoping that I would get into and break out into UX research. So now, my life as a UX researcher, I've been in the UX CX world for about 3 years now, and have worked for various industries ranging from pharmaceuticals, fintech, aerospace. Currently, I'm a senior UX researcher at GE Aerospace. Um, and in the very beginning, especially coming from customer service and things like that, you hear some of these tech roles and you expect all of them to be very much the same. I expect to do the same things that I do in one job. I can bring that over to the next, but um, as I was going, transitioning from job to job, or like just seeing how everything works, every role is very different. It's really pretty much dependent on the company and the scope of their mission and projects. So, for example, when I worked for McKesson, which was a pharmaceutical company, they were more in like the healthcare kind of space. They more so focused on research for design, whereas GE, they focus more on like service design research, right? Looking at a full scope of um, end-to-end services and how things go from A to B to C rather than design, right? So yeah, that was really great to kind of see that difference. And lastly, these are some lessons learned that I picked up while during my transition. So switching my mindset from thinking of a customer experience in a physical sense to a more of a digital sense. So that was really difficult for me. Um, I just didn't know how to switch that mindset. So it took me some time to like better understand how things are in the digital world, right? Looking at UI, looking at different devices and tooling and things like that. Also, lessons learned, a big lesson learned was like how many different research methodologies there are. So, for example, as I was mentioning, the conferences and the networking was the biggest benefit that I found. Um, during those times were, finding out uh, what's new in the UX world. And also technology moves so fast. Like look at how AI is and like it can change from day to day, week to week. So staying in the know and learning all the different techniques have been really helpful in my space. Um, Also another lesson learned, and this was gave me a lot of anxiety when I first started, um, was feeling like I needed to be an expert in these digital tools or devices or UX design or whatever it was. Our goal as UX researchers, for example, is to the understand these toolings and devices and figure out their relationship with end users. So we don't have to be an expert, right? So that was something that helped alleviate the anxiety that, transitioning and coming into this did. Um, Also, I learned stakeholder management is super important. I cannot express enough how much like building those good relationships, how they've built upon my career in terms of being able to grow and things like that. But also like, having those honest conversations and good rapports and things like that. But that's something that's really important. And also, especially for those that are wanting to, transition careers from customer service into this, it can be very daunting. But to understand and remember that everyone has moments of being wrong and it's okay. Even the individuals that have been in this kind of world of UX research for a long time, we all mess up a little bit or we don't make the right decision or maybe went down a different path, but there's always continuous learning. There's always, as I have a lessons learned section, there's always going to be that. So I think having that openness to being wrong is what really has helped me in terms of like, imposter syndrome and things like that. So yeah, that's a little bit about me and my career transition. I would love to, go over if I saw the chat box lighting up. So let me stop sharing for a second. Awesome. One second. Oop. I want to make sure. Oh, okay. I don't know or is anyone going off of mute to ask questions, or is it more so in the chat, Samaya?
I think if everyone could just start to add in questions in the chat.
Yeah, if anyone has any questions, please feel free to ask about transition or anything like that. Would love to go through and ask.
And I will put Yasmin out there. She is our career coach for the UX Woman program because of her expertise working in recruitment and being able to land UX jobs. Within 3 to 6 months of her applying, she's a hustler. So I know, folks were starting to ask Kristen about the job search. So Yasmin, I'm going to open you up to more of the job search side of the questions, if you're okay with that.
Yeah, of course.
You don't have to get through every single one of them. We have until 1 p.m. But and we can make this a discussion as well.
So talking more about the job search and things like that. Yeah, it definitely wasn't easy. I think at that time I was applying back in like 2022. And I think the biggest thing that I've learned during this time um is how much you have to iterate as you go, right? So I had a resume, I had a portfolio, I had, my LinkedIn and stuff like that. But assessing during my application, like I think I gave it 2 weeks. I applied. Let me see what was my feedback. Was I getting a bunch of rejection letters? Um, was I getting even recruiter calls, right? Was I getting uh people looking at my LinkedIn, things like that. Those are the little things that you should look at because there was weeks that I didn't get any calls. And I was like, okay, I think this is a time for me to check and adjust, right? This is a time for me to look at my resume and do I need to tweak something? Or did I talk to a recruiter and uh they mentioned a term I had no idea. So during those times, what was really helpful for me was I literally had a running list of just questions that I asked that was actually asked of me that I had no idea the answers to. And then I did my own research on them and figured out how that related to something in my role. Um, and that's kind of what helped me continuously learn and continuously grow in this space. And then I would see each time, one after another, each week, for example, at once I made these changes, I was getting more outreach from recruiters, from hiring managers, even, and things like that. So I think it's just more so the biggest learning is the continuously iterating on your process, right? And I think the portfolio piece can be a little bit daunting in the sense of, I have a little bit of OCD, so I like to always continuously change that, but that's a little more of a heavier lift. So learning how to balance out what is doable for me, what can I get done quickly and within a good time management kind of space. Because if I decide to change my whole portfolio because I don't like the aesthetic of it, of course, be true to you and how you want to signify and portray yourself, but not every recruiter is going to be looking at like maybe especially for research, nobody's going to be like, I don't like that color. They're not going to look at that. It's more so like what is the meat behind your case studies and things like that. I'm sure as a designer, it's a little bit different because aesthetics is a thing, but manage your time wisely. So I think what really helped me was building a cadence for myself of every Monday to Friday, I would apply from like 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. and just apply, outreach, outreach, outreach. And that way it kind of was the very beginning of the day. So recruiters would see it and they would like, hey, I want to talk to you and things like that. I think also my time as a recruiter, my 2 months, definitely helped me kind of see how things worked. So I knew in the ATS systems, I'd be at the very top when the recruiters are going through it. Or like a little tip I have was like applying Sunday nights. So that way when they come in on Monday morning, I'd be at the top of their list for jobs, right? So like learning these little things on how to kind of finagle my way in was really helpful. Oh, I see some comments. Oh my God, I'm so behind.
And yeah, just take your time and you can read the questions out loud as you go. Or if you want me to read the questions for you, I'm happy to do that.
Oh no, it's fine. It's fine. I just want to make sure where I ended and where I started. Chanel, can you share an example of a project that you've recently worked on? Yeah, so during my time at GE, I was actually hired as a contractor to help conduct a migration um of 70,000 employees. So it's more so internal facing and pretty much so the migration is more so like tooling. So all, you know how we utilize Outlook and Teams and all the Microsoft products. So it was migrating all of those products to a GCC high environment, which pretty much is an overlay on top of it and super compliance heavy. So that's pretty much super secure. Just think of it like that. Um, and how can we migrate all of these employees without um, ruining their process of working, right? Some of these people are making, I think the biggest piece is understanding our users. Who are our users? Some of them are in legal, some of them are in HR, some of them are in, some of them are having billion-dollar conversations with clients. And if they're down for a whole day or a week, that's a big hit, and that'll be against the digital workplace team. So these are the things in terms of a service kind of design, kind of research space. That's something that you look at. So I was in charge of like helping build that roadmap, um, and figuring out how can we, as a research team, implement touch points within this process. So the migration, for example, was broken into 6 different waves. So us as a researchers, I created customer satisfaction surveys, or just overall surveys, touch points throughout the migration. So whether it's before or after or in a communications that an email they get out, things like that. And I'm reviewing the data daily and providing those insights and recommendations to the product team. So any product managers, product owners, um, things like that. So that's like one of the most recent projects, but again, it's very different from a very design heavy project where I've done some of that too, which is like more so implementing change within a UI or a product that, or a company has. But hopefully I didn't give anybody a bunch of confusion. It's a lot. It's a lot. Believe me, it took me at least a good couple of months to understand my own project. So it was a lot just dealing with that. Vaishali, eh, what are some of the biggest challenges in transition and how did you manage them? Um, I think the biggest challenges during my transition was applying, I think. And talking with recruiters. I had one recruiter who actually asked me if all I did was make coffee. So I think um that's why it was a big piece in my presentation of like how much, for example, some of these managers or things like that do. There's a lot of behind the scenes work that happens. Um, so I think, kind of relinquishing that stigma of like, hey, I didn't only make a cappuccino, I also did a lot of other things, and how to advocate for myself and build that confidence to advocate for myself in the work that I did to get me into my first role, for example. I think that was the biggest challenge. Because of course, imposter syndrome, you get, insecure and you're like, yeah, maybe I did just make coffee and things like that. So I think that was the biggest learning that I had during that. Um, and managing them, honestly, a lot of just conversations with other people that are going through those transitions. I think, having my friend being able to do this with me and things like that was really helpful. And talking to Samaya, for example, or talking to going to these networking events of people that were also trying to break through in, I think that was really helpful in kind of my journey in that space. Um, thank you. Let me see. So one question is, how do you go about learning and implementing new research methodologies? What resources has been helpful to you discovering new methodologies? To be honest, I think a big help was a lot of these jobs that I've joined, I'm working with researchers that have been in their roles for 10, 15 years. So listening to them, right? So I'm an avid I love to observe. So I listen to some of the new methodologies that are new to me, right? Um, and taking that and doing my own research on that and looking into it and how can I implement it? What kind of research would be good for what kind of study, like understanding that the scope of said methodologies. But again, like I was saying, joining these conferences or tech meetups and things like that, I think they've been really helpful in terms of anything new to the world of like UX or just tech in general. I think though that's been the biggest lesson in terms of learning anything new for research methodologies. I was thinking, I think also building that community, right? Having that community of other researchers or designers even that has also helped me like learn new things because all of us are in different roles or whatever like that. So everyone does things differently in different kind of companies. So I would definitely suggest that. How did you sell yourself at interviews coming from a non-UX background? Yes, that's a good question. Definitely highlighting a lot of the transferable skills that I had. And speaking to that, I also, in order for me to get in, I also did some freelance work, and then also there's some on like LinkedIn. There was some uh free, like it was unpaid research work that you could do for some orgs or anything like that. So I did a couple of those just to kind of add to my portfolio. Um, so that was really helpful. Then I was able to speak to that experience as well, rather than just my Starbucks experience. Um, for example, working, finding those friends, right, that have their own companies and businesses. And in the beginning, I was at that point, I just needed a job. So I was like, I was doing design and research. So I offered to like create a website, for example, for my one of my friends' business. So yeah, finding like those little things to kind of enhance your skill sets, but then also being able to bring that to the table when you're having these conversations with recruiters and hiring managers and things like that. And also some companies are, yes, there are some that are very technical driven, so they really want to like test your capabilities and like what you know in terms of research or design. But there are also a lot of companies that are focused on behavioral, right? Like, how are you during ambiguity? How are you during you know, when you don't know how to do something, how do you ask for help? So a lot of like managers are looking at that too. So I think my first role was, thankfully, it was because of mainly because of that. I think my management skills and my ability to collaborate and things like that, I think that was the biggest thing that they wanted in a researcher. So I think highlighting those skills are really great. Those soft skills are actually a lot of hard skills that people need in this kind of space. Um, would you mind sharing some resources or ways we can find out UX networking events? So no matter if I have a job or not, I'm always looking at LinkedIn. I'm always connecting with people on LinkedIn. And people are really great at posting events or especially virtual events. Also, depending on the state that you're in, I go to like, I think meetup.com. It's like an app and you can search tech meetups in your city or anything like that. I've met a lot of people like I met a girl that's a designer at Audible, or things like that, like working at really cool companies and building those relationships because when you're applying, those referrals are a big thing. There's actually a study that like people get jobs at a higher pace from a referral rather than just cold applying. So find those connections, people that you went to college with, people that you've worked with in the past that are now in like kind of a UX or tech role. Maybe they are a customer success manager for Squarespace or something, and like, hey, maybe they can put in a referral for you for a UX designer or researcher. So those are like the little ways and pathways you can go. But I definitely would like search up the state and UX Connects or tech meetups and things like that, and they may have those. Um, uh, Reva, I'm in CS, looking to pivot into design research. I have very little experience. Are there specific job titles that are easier to pivot into than others? So I think from a customer experience background, or customer service. I think potentially research is a little bit easier than design, unless you put in a lot of work in your design skills and you're really passionate about that. I think it's either or. There's a lot of like different verbiage that, or yeah, different verbiage that people kind of have for roles. So if you look up, there's like UX research, design, does UX design researcher, there's customer experience researcher. There's like so many different kind of titles that can be doing just the same thing. Um, so I would definitely look at the differences, but I think overall from customer service, you can kind of apply to any of them. But I see in relation, research is a little bit easier to get into. And you asked also about pay cut. I'm not too sure exactly like what your pay range is in your specific role. It can vary depending on the company. Um, so hopefully, I mean, we always strive for more of a higher pay, but I think a big thing is negotiation, right? So, negotiating in that sense is really important. Um, Maria, so from a PhD physics to UX design and so forth, no success with applications. Sorry. Do you have some tips for junior UX designers in this field? Yeah, I think pretty much everything I was saying before, depending, again, it's very dependent on your own work experience and like what you're capable of doing, right? Are you working right now while you're doing this? Can you do, something free, right? In terms of getting more exposure and projects under your belt. But I don't have as much experience in terms of designers. I can definitely speak to like more research. And I think if you have your PhD in physics, definitely research may be a good segue because I know a lot of um, researchers that come from academia, for example, or more of like a sciencey background, and um, a lot of companies hire based on their experience in that space, maybe like healthcare or anything sciencey. Um, I think that would be the best bet. But again, design, I would recommend, from my experience, potentially working on some freelance kind of projects, getting more design uh, case studies under your belt and things like that, and just getting more exposure to that, to utilizing the tooling and such. Okay. If I don't get any feedback, how can I make those changes? And that's a great question. I think it's more so how I made those changes when I wasn't getting any feedback. I was kind of again scoping out LinkedIn and looking to see what people are posting about, maybe looking at even the job descriptions in the roles that I was applying to. Maybe verbiage needs to be changed. Maybe I need to add more keywords, right? Um, Things of that nature. I think that's what really helped me, and seeing if it lands, right? Seeing if this is gonna get more of a pull from other hiring managers, recruiters, things of that nature. So I think that's the route I kind of went through. And then yeah, I think the job description is the biggest factor and key point for sure. Um What do you like about this field and how did you prepare for it? Um, I think I really enjoy which is what I did at Starbucks too, is just more so advocating for the user, right? But then also like it's cool when it's relatable, right? So I worked on a platform for retirement and being a millennial I had no clue about finances and how to improve that and what that might look like, and having that relatability and be like, oh, I could be one of those users one day, or I'm one of those users, and seeing how I can better that experience has been really cool. So I think those are the moments that I'm like, oh wow, I really enjoy this. But yeah, advocating for the user. um so that in a sense didn't really I don't think I had to prepare for that because that's what I did as a manager. But in terms of preparing for UX research, I think just being a learner, right? Like I said, like I had a running list. Like it was such a long list of just things I had no clue. I would just write it down as I was going. So I think that was really helpful, and I would definitely recommend that. What did you include in your portfolio given your background wasn't historically in UX research? Any recommendations on how to showcase your non-UX background? And yeah, so actually earlier on I created a portfolio case study, or sorry, a case study of my portfolio for what I did. Like, so first mapping out what I did as a manager, right? And seeing how that could relate to UX research, right? So it was more so service design research kind of in a way. So talking about how I created that service and how I laid out that service or mapped it out, or what evaluations I did or things like that. So more so service design heavy. I think that was really helpful, and that's how I kind of pulled the Starbucks in there. But then also you can do something fun, right? Of like I I'm sure a lot of us have seen the Starbucks app, right? So how would I redesign it, or how is this experience, right? While I was a manager at Starbucks, I also users we had like our customer satisfaction score, or I forgot what we called it back then, but users or customers were able to provide feedback and on their experience at a specific store. So looking at that and how was that tracked? How would I have changed in terms of the what data is being pulled, how often, like adding those kind of things into your portfolio and relating it to that customer experience kind of time was really helpful for me in terms of being able to speak to and like kind of change my tone and mindset in how I was speaking about my experience at Starbucks, right? So hopefully that was helpful. Mm. What were necessary for recruiters for you to finally land the job in UX? How to put yourself at the top of recruiters' list? Yeah, I think that was referring to what I was talking to about before. More so, applying to jobs, for example, like I wasn't applying on Saturdays or Friday nights because everyone's kind of out of the office and they're not seeing it. So making sure that applying, for example, Sunday evenings, right? So prior to, um, users, oh, I'm not sure if somebody was talking or having anything to say. Sorry. I don't want to cut anybody off. But yeah, I think that was the most helpful. I don't know if it actually worked, but from my experience when I was a recruiter, oh, this is me making my assumptions, but yeah, I would look from the top down. So when I came in on Monday as a recruiter, I would look at all the applications or submissions, and it would go from the most recent to the oldest. So I figured if I did that, on Sunday nights, for example, or the nights before the weekday, the next weekday, I would be at the top of the list and hopefully they would give me a call. But I think also it's mainly about what's in your resume, what's in your portfolio, things like that. So, Lakshmi, been in healthcare for 15 years. I have been applying and applying, but it seems like I cannot break through. I'm even trying to get my Scrum Master certification. I have resume portfolio linked on brand at this point. Yeah. I know the current market right now compared to back in 2022 when I was initially applying is a little bit difficult in terms of the number of jobs and things like that and how much competition. So I totally get that. I know that's a little difficult. But I've seen a lot of people that have worked in healthcare get into UX research, and also get some higher, senior roles. And I'm sure I think Valerie's going to be talking later and she'll have a lot more context regarding that. But yeah, getting your Scrum Master certification is great. Also like, what's it called? Oh my God, now the term is losing me. If I remember that, it's great. Um, but yeah, these extra things are gonna just help you, but sometimes reaching or asking for or networking is like the biggest thing I can say. Reaching out to other senior UX researchers that potentially have also transitioned from healthcare, right? That's really great to kind of get feedback and insight into their background, right? And how you can kind of get feedback. And also you can look at their LinkedIn, like what do they have on there and what can I adjust on mine, right? Is it true? They say if you don't have a connection, it's almost impossible to find your role in this industry. Um, I have never actually gotten a role from a connection. I've always gotten it from just applying myself. Um, so it's not, like I was saying, this job market is a little bit different compared to 2022, but even some of my most recent roles or projects that I've gotten, it's all been kind of me applying as regular. But again, I understand I've had some experience that's a little bit different. But yeah, I do think it is possible. I don't think it's impossible, but definitely networking and getting those connections are helpful in that sense. Do you have any tips on getting through the ATS scan? Again, this is looking through the job description, looking at some of the keywords that they have, like if this role is really like if it's very much AI driven, like a lot of those roles are, right? Looking at that, adding that to your resume, seeing or more so learning about it and how you can add that, or if they're looking at, or you see a lot of roles asking about mixed methods research or more quantitative research or certain tools, right? Like familiarize yourself with it, like Adobe if you're a designer, InVision, obviously Figma is the biggest one, like other kind of tooling that they're like, okay, they have that experience in there. Mm. Peyton, I'm about to graduate my BS in UX design and struggling to land an internship. Tips on landing that initial internship with no prior UX work experience. I have seen a bunch of, especially if you're graduating from school, I know a lot of internships are focused on students that are about to graduate. Um, and I think the biggest thing is like connecting. So I remember when I first started, I would just literally type in UX research and just and find individuals and just connect. So I had to just build my network, and that way they sometimes they don't even post it on LinkedIn in the jobs. You have to like literally they just post it on their page, right? So keeping your eye out for that. And also what we're in May, so definitely you'll start. I've seen a lot of them pick up in May, but then also potentially in June too. So I would definitely keep your eye out and apply to all of them. So not only on LinkedIn, look on Indeed, look through Google Jobs also. Sometimes some of these smaller businesses don't post on some of these bigger platforms. I know like also UX Woman has like their job board and things like that for junior and interns, for example. So I think right now is about your time to start really looking. So connect, 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 and you know, look for the internships there because there I definitely see them out there. I've had people that are not graduating school and they're trying to get into the internships and they're not, accepted because they don't have they didn't just finish school. So I think you're in that prime for that. Um, how did you get the recruiter to talk with you during the career transformation in the beginning? Um, yeah, so honestly, it was just my resume. I think some of my case studies and things like that, making sure it's catered towards the just the industry and things like that. Again, I just applied and they kind of reached out to me. But I know there's a lot of people that, you know, reach out to the recruiters and just get to know and be like, hey, this is my experience. Recruiters get that a lot. So finding ways to make yourself stand out is really important. So yeah, I think that's great. How has AI affected the UX design industry? In terms of design, I can't speak for that. But I've seen I'm actually, a lot of my role is utilizing AI or learning how to implement AI within our process. So I think a lot of it depends on the company. Some of them are like pushing it away, or some of them are just fully taking it in. I think what's important is working alongside AI and looking at how it can enhance, for example, a research process. So I'm actually working with my team on how to um, integrate AI into our process and make the turnaround time a lot faster. So like whether that's synthesizing, right? But there's a lot of testing to it because depending on the tool, within the companies, you're not allowed to use, for example, maybe ChatGPT. You have to because of confidential information and things like that. So there's a lot of testing on like how it could be integrated, but I think everyone's in the very beginning, not very beginning, but beginning stages of that space. In terms of design, I can't speak to that because I don't have as much experience for that. But yeah, I think a lot of companies are trying to work with AI rather than push up against it or just have it just take over. Um, so this is a good question. Was your first UX research role difficult at all because your background wasn't UX related? Did your team have any expectations for you to hit the ground running, so to speak? If so, did that create any pressure? Thankfully, my first role was actually the team was built. So I actually worked for a business consulting company, and they were working with a big client. So that team was actually being built. So there was a lot of unknowns for all of us, and we were learning on how to figure that out as it comes. So I think that was helpful in terms of giving me some time to like try to understand what everything is. How did I, as a consultant, work with this client? Things like that, like, oh, how do I create a discussion guide? How do I do this? How do I do that? So it gave me a little bit of room to breathe and like learn. Um, but when I started at GE, it was definitely like hit the ground running. I know it was like my first week I did onboarding, and then like the next week I was doing projects. So learning, I think being a quick learner and try to think on my feet was a really big thing. But understanding that, like I said, like we can all make mistakes, but I think being open to being a learner is the biggest thing I can recommend. And asking questions and being okay with asking questions. But also doing some of the research for yourself. But yeah, so hopefully that helped. Um, When network, I found it somewhat awkward when conversing reached at some point. How can we, as applicants or new people to this career, eliminate that kind of awkwardness? I think this is actually something Samantha taught us in the very beginning was it's difficult to ask. Well, it's different when networking, but when you're like just reaching out to people on LinkedIn, for example, asking about themselves, right? Like learning about more about their story and their background. Because and learning how to decipher those things or their pathway. Like I was like, okay, I'm thinking to myself, how can that help me, right? Because there's going to be reach a level of awkwardness if you're asking them questions about yourself and like, can you review this? Can you do this for me? Not many people are going to do that. There's some really nice people and there's not that many nice people sometimes. So it depends. So finding those questions and finding a way to kind of get the answers, but more so catering it towards them. But if you're like outside networking, I think finding that like balance of getting to know them as a human being has been really helpful, right? Connecting with them. And I've made some of my friends from networking events. But then after getting to know them, like, okay, so like, oh, what do you do? And then you talk about work. And then they're a little bit more open to having those like in-person conversations and letting you know. And then like, seeing them again at another networking event, and then you guys get to talk more. So getting that human piece is the biggest importance. Like you have to like understand them as a human, talk to them. Hey, how you doing? Where are you from? And then leading into like, so what do you do? How'd you get that job? How'd you work for, Estee Lauder? Like things like that. So finding that balance is really important. Some tools with AI. So can you please mention some names of tools with AI? So I think the major one is obviously everybody knows ChatGPT. I know Figma has something coming out. I know there's like, what's it called? Microsoft Copilot. That's another chatbot kind of thing. I think everyone, all these big brands are creating their own chatbots. A lot of the ones that I was mainly mentioning was like more so internal use. For example, GE created their own chatbot to utilize, but I think the biggest one is ChatGPT that we're all using, right? But there's like I said, Copilot and things like that. I know Figma has its own kind of thing in terms of like summarizing. I know they're working on a lot of other things in terms of like design. So definitely kind of scoping that out, learning how to prompt when I think that's really big. Even though AI is getting a lot smarter and it's able to speed up and get you the answers that you want, but learning how to properly prompt and put together a prompt to input within the chatbots have been really helpful. And learning how that kind of integrates within other platforms, right? Like seeing how it integrates with like Google, right? Like you just type in something and you see at the very top, it's like, this is summarized. So like as a researcher, I'm like, oh, there is AI integrated within this platform. Like seeing how those relationships and dynamics work is really interesting and also like important. So when you're talking about it, you have some background knowledge to it. So yeah. Um, I applied UX research in the education setting and I'm trying to branch out. Ah, um, yeah, so especially when you're starting out, I recommend like obviously I've worked for pharma, fintech, things like that. Ideally, I would love to work for like Estee Lauder or like Sephora or uh a mental health app or Tinder or something really cool, right? Or something retail. But I think in the very beginning I was like, I just need to get a job. So I just applied to everything and everything. Like I was like, oh, doesn't look like I have an experience or background in it, too bad I'm applying, right? And there's like some people that, give you a shot and give you a chance just based on, your connect and things like that. And some don't, and that's fine. But I wouldn't put yourself in a box in the very beginning. So if you have education background and only go in education, your applies are going to be very limited. So I suggest just applying to everything because there are some companies that like you don't need to have a healthcare background. You don't have to have education. You don't have to have fintech, right? There's going to be that one company that gives you a shot and be like, I think she's really great. I'm going to bring her in or him and her in. And that's when you get your experience. So that's definitely a big recommendation. And also, sometimes a lot of job descriptions, it may seem like you're not like you shouldn't apply to it or you can't. You still can. I've applied to jobs that had like 7 years of experience, and I was like, I don't have that, but I'm still gonna give it a shot, you know? And or like you need to have this, you need to have that. And I'm like, that's not applicable, but I'm still gonna apply. So I definitely recommend just applying and shooting your shot, as they say. And I know we have like 5 minutes, but I'm looking at some of these questions. Oh, Google Gemini AI. Yeah, yeah. Awesome. I see I'm learning some more AI tooling. Um, what are some major differences you find in a UX interview versus other positions? Definitely obviously showcasing a portfolio that I did not have to do that for Starbucks, as I was becoming a manager and things like that. So having a portfolio, having to do, um, design presentations, things like that. I know like there's for design, I think there's like testing or like UX challenges or whatever like that. I haven't had to experience that, but in the research realm, yeah. But I'm sure like I've interviewed before when before I got into UX for like sales representatives, and they make you do on the spot what's it called? Like role playing, right? So like if you're comfortable with something like that, it'll be a little bit easier with UX research kind of things. But a lot of it is like understanding some of your technical capabilities, understanding your behavioral capabilities, and then like the difference is like having to showcase a presentation or a slide deck of like a case study and things like that. I think that's like the biggest difference that I had to like, I was like, oh crap, I need to put together a presentation to showcase some of my work. Um, so that's a good question. Do UX researchers also need to be familiar with tools like Figma and other design software? How important is hands-on experience with these tools in your day-to-day? So that's really important. I think it's great to have a base level knowledge of these tools, because especially if you're working in a very design heavy company and you're collaborating with designers, you want to be able, well, also Figma, a lot of people are utilizing FigJam, for example, and like replacing Miro with FigJam. So learning how to do workshops with them and things like that. But when you're doing fully design, it's good to have a base level knowledge of like recommendations for designers, for example, or how to work collaboratively with them, or even like I'm doing when you're doing usability testing and you have to do prototype testing, right? You have to know how to kind of play around with Figma in terms of like how to share prototype or whatever like that, right? So I think with other toolings too, a lot of them are very similar. So if you know Figma and know a couple others, you're pretty good. But again, I think having a base level knowledge, you don't have to be an expert. You don't have to have experience creating a design system or anything like that, but I think just knowing how to click through and like sift through these toolings and know the capabilities, I think that's really important. We have 2 more minutes. I'm trying to